Good morning, everybody. Good, good morning, everybody. I want us to start our class for a few minutes. Uh, I hope everybody is attentive and ready for this class. And as we are starting the class, I want us to know that last time we were talking about intelligence. And intelligence is a cognitive process. Intelligence is a cognitive process. We talked on how to deal with one part of intelligence test called the IQ test. And in the IQ test, we talked of two main types of edges. Main types of edges. And we, so we talked of the chronological age, and we also talked of the mental age. And I said that chronological age is the age that somebody has from birth to the time when it is. So your age, your physical age is what we call the chronological age. While your age measured through the level of education is what we refer to as mental age. Mental age would vary depending on when one entered the school. If you started the school late, we may classify your mental age in such a way. And that's why the intelligence was looked at in different ways. So that's what we were looking at. But today I want us to look at memory. Memory. So you can write that word memory in your notebook. Memory. And I want us to begin by defining what memory is. In psychology, memory is the faculty, memory is the faculty of encoding, storing, and retrieving information. In psychology, memory is the faculty of encoding, storing, and retrieving information. And it is conceptualized, through different stages. It is conceptualized through different stages. These stages include sensory, 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 short term. So we call it sensory, short term, and long term. Sensory, short term, and long term. So it is conceptualized through stages. Those are the three stages: short term and long term, and also conceptualized through through types of memory, which are explicit and implicit memory. We are going to look at them: explicit and implicit memory. So we are continuing. Let me just repeat the definition. In psychology, memory is the faculty of encoding, storing, and retrieving information. So anytime somebody approaches you and tells you, can you define memory? What is memory? You should be able to define memory. And when you are defining memory, even if I was the one marking your work, I'll be looking at the key words. Those keywords include encoding, storing, and retrieving. So if you are not able to bring those three keywords, then your definition will be a fallacy. Your definition will be a fallacy, and we don't count it as the definition. And that's why you may have written very well, but we may not give you. Some people will define memory as thinking. Thinking. Some people will also be saying it is storing information. It's not bad, but it must have these three keywords: encoding, you encode the information; storing, you store that information; and you retrieve the information, retrieving information. And normally it is conceptualized through different stages. The stages are sensory, short term, and long term, and also conceptualized through types, which are explicit and implicit memory. So that one is our definition. That one is our definition. Stages of memory. Stages of memory. There are three main stages of memory. There are three main stages of memory. One is sensory memory. Sensory memory. sensory memory. This kind of memory receives information and holds the incoming sensory information for a very brief period. It receives information and holds the incoming sensory information for a very brief period or a very short period, like just 1 or 2 seconds, like 1 or 2 seconds. The information is held for a short period or a brief period, very brief, like 1 or 2 seconds. So that one we are calling it sensory memory. It's like you are passing in the street and then you have glanced and saw somebody. Then immediately you stop seeing that person and you want to think how that person was, how he was dressing, how he had dressed. You can't remember very well. So that information stayed in your memory or was held in your memory for a very brief moment. So because that information takes this very brief period, it may not be retained in the system or in the brain. It may not be retained. So for it to be retained, for that information in the sensory memory to be retained for some time, it has to be rehearsed. Rehearsed means you think about it again or you look at it again for maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes. So when you are doing that, you can now remember it for some time. And that one brings us to the second stage of memory called short-term memory. Short-term memory. So before you write, what I was trying to imply is if sensory memory or the information in the sensory memory is rehearsed. Rehearsal, is repeating it. Rehearsed. That information will be moved to the short-term memory stage. Short-term memory stage. And at the short-term memory, we say that a temporary, short-term memory is a temporary storage, sorry. Short-term memory is a temporary storage system. As temporary storage system with a limited capacity, that holds information with a limited capacity that holds information for about 18 to 30 seconds. That holds information for about 18 to 30 seconds. It holds information for about 18 to 30 seconds. Remember, in sensory memory, it was just 1 to 2 seconds. But this one is about 18 to 30 seconds. Will hold information for about 18 to 30 seconds. If this information is not rehearsed, if the information in the short-term memory is not rehearsed, after 30 seconds, it will go. It will be forgotten. You cannot remember it again. You cannot remember it again. So it can only be stored there for 18 to 30 seconds. Then, if it is rehearsed, it is going to be moved to the third stage. If it is rehearsed, it will be moved to the third stage, and that third stage is what we call long-term memory. Long-term memory. Long-term memory. So that is the third stage. And long-term memory stores information for a very, very long time. We are saying it stores information indefinitely. Indefinitely. Some people were told that indefinitely is read as indefinitely, but it is indefinitely. You can't define when, until when. Indefinitely, we can't define because some people can stay with it the rest of their lives. Some people can stay with it until maybe age interferes or other things interfere. So long-term memory will store information for a very, very long period, or it will store it indefinitely. So up to where we have reached, we know that there are three main stages of memory. Sensory memory, which holds information for a very brief period. Short-term memory, which holds information for about 18 to 30 seconds. Some will be 15 to 30 seconds. Then long-term memory, which will store the information for a very long time. It stores information indefinitely. How do we deal with the memory? Whenever you receive information or whenever it is encoded, you need to rehearse it. So when normally it lands on the sensory pad, at the sensory pad, it should be rehearsed. And if it is not rehearsed, it will disappear. So when you rehearse it, it moves automatically to the short-term memory. So when it reaches short-term memory, it also needs to be rehearsed. And rehearsing it means you are repeating it, you are revising. So when you rehearse it, it moves again to long-term memory. That is what is affecting your studies. Somebody may be in a class and was not writing, and the lecture or teaching was going on. And another person was writing down. So after some time, the one who wrote will look at whatever he wrote again. Or by the time you are writing, you are taking some seconds. That writing, that thing, you have had it, and as you take it down on the paper, you are registering it in the memory, in the short-term memory. As you look at it again or revise it, automatically it will end in the long-term memory. So by the time you are going for an exam, you don't have a problem because everything has been stored at the back end, and that is the long-term memory. The people who look at things briefly, they are the people who will be looking for Mwakenya. You are looking for something that will try to jog your mind again because those things were not kept in the long-term memory. So that one brings us to the end of the stages. I want us to look briefly on the types of memory. Types of memory. As I told you previously when we were talking of conceptualizing memory, we said that memory can be conceptualized into two main types. That is explicit and implicit. Explicit and implicit. Those who have, I know we have the English students there, the English group. You know very well that X means outside and aim or in means in. Like when you talk of import, it's the same as import, but we don't want to say that those are the imports. We are calling them imports. So implicit means inside and explicit means external. Now let's look at them. Types of memory. One is explicit. Explicit, some people call it declarative. Declarative comes from the word declare, declarative memory. Explicit or declarative memory. Explicit or declarative memory. And this one takes into consideration. This one takes into consideration conscious recall. Conscious recall. Conscious recall, such as remembering facts. Remembering facts. Remembering facts in those who are doing English, we call it semantic memory. Semantic in English is meaning, dealing with meaning, fact. Semantic is meaning, fact. For example, you cannot say in a language that this sun is very cold. That one grammatically is correct, but semantically it is wrong. Semantically is wrong. So you may have a very correct sentence, but it is not factual. So anything which is not factual, we are saying it is not semantically correct. So when we are talking of explicit or declarative memory, it takes in consideration conscious recall, such as remembering facts or semantic memory or personal events. Personal events, e.g. episodic memory. So you may know what happened. At first, you say, we started by doing 1, 2, 3. Number 2, we went to this place and did this and that. And number 3, we ended up doing this and that. So you are remembering those episodes, episodic episodes, the things which were there. You can also remember the facts, like right now I've talked about definition for memory. And I'll be looking for facts like encoding, facts like storage, and facts like uh, retrieving. So those are the facts you are remembering. And then when you bring those facts together, then you have the total meaning. So those keywords, remembering those keywords is what we call explicit. So we are saying explicit or declarative memory takes into consideration conscious recall, such as remembering facts. Remembering facts is what we call semantic memory, or personal events, episodic memory. So when somebody asks you, what is semantic memory? You tell him that one is simply remembering facts. And what is episodic memory? Episodic memory is an explicit memory that deals with the personal events. I want you people to know how to present your points. One, somebody asks, what is a semantic memory? You first of all tell us that semantic memory is explicit memory that deals with remembering facts. Remembering facts. And what is episodic memory? You tell him episodic memory is explicit memory that deals with remembering personal events. Personal events. How the events happened. Do you remember how you entered study one? How was it? How were you received? Were you crying or were you what? That one is what we are calling remembering personal events. Then, so under explicit memory or declarative memory, I may ask you what is explicit or declarative memory. Or I may ask you what is semantic memory. Or I may ask you, give us two types of explicit memories. Two types, two examples, not two types, but two examples of explicit memory. Or I can tell you, explain two types of, two examples of explicit memory. So you'll say one, semantic memory, which deals with remembering facts. Two, episodic memory, which deals with personal events. That one you shall have scored very well. So I think up to there, I've given you a good definition of explicit memory. Let's come to number two, which is implicit memory. Implicit memory is also referred to as non-declarative memory. Implicit memory is called non-declarative. It involves unconscious recall. Unconscious recall. You are recalling unconsciously. You find the things are just visiting your mind, your brain, and you are not declaring them. You are not even writing them, and they are just visiting your brain. So we are saying it involves unconscious recall, where the other one was conscious recall. And it involves unconscious recall, which include procedural memory. Procedural memory. Procedural memory takes into consideration skills and habits. Skills and habits. Procedural memory takes into consideration skills and habits. And then we have what we call the classical conditioning. So, in short, we are saying it involves unconscious recall, such as procedural memory, in bracket, skills and habits, and classical conditioning. I'll explain that. And classical conditioning. When we were introducing ourselves, we talked of, I don't know whether we have done it with you, but we talked of, no, learning. Have we done learning? Yeah, I'm going to find out. In learning, when we are dealing with learning, we talk of theories of learning, and one theory of learning is classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov. And in this kind of learning, it's learning by association, associating one thing with another thing. Classical. So it's associating the bell with the meat, and it is also associating the meat with salivation. So the response, there's what we call, there is a stimulus and then there is a response. So there's always a response to a particular stimulus. A response to a particular stimulus. So that's what we call classical conditioning. You can condition your memory classically by putting, you have a skill of remembering things. You put something, you know, if I write A will be reminding me of something else. Will reminding me of so many things. B will remind me of several things. C will remind me of several things. So that one will be, you have conditioned your brain in such a way. So that one is under implicit or non-declarative memory. So those are the two types of memory. One, explicit memory, and two, implicit memory. So you have to think about them, because when you are doing your questions, questions can always come from those areas. Now, the main processes of memory. Can write that one. Main processes of memory. Main processes. The processes of memory. Number one is encoding. Encoding. Number one is encoding. Remember, encoding is simply the coding we are talking about, COD. Encoding. And this process is involves learning information. It involves learning information by perceiving and relating it to existing knowledge. Perceiving and relating it to existing knowledge. You are perceiving. To perceive is to have the inner thought. Perceiving and relating it to existing knowledge. Number two, we have storage. We have talked of encoding, we have storage. This one is maintaining or holding. Maintaining or holding the encoded information for a particular time or period. Maintaining or holding the encoded information for a particular time or period. So there's a time which defines sensory memory, a time which defines short-term memory, and a time that defines long-term memory. So we are saying for a particular time. Then number three is what we call retrieval. To retrieve. To retrieve. Retrieval is like removing. To retrieve. Retrieve the information. Like when you are going to do your online exams, we are going to put the information, you do the exam, and then that exam is stored in the storage. We are going to go to the storage where you submitted your exam, and we retrieve it. Retrieving or download it. Or we just retrieve it. We may not download it, we may just see it there. So that retrieving and removing it, then we mark it. So you can see retrieval. So you can write retrieval. This one is accessing the information from storage when it is needed. Accessing the information from the storage when it is needed. When you need it, like when you go for exam and you are asked a question, what is memory? you only retrieve what defines memory. Somebody tells what are the three types, the three stages of memory. You run very fast and say they are sensory, short-term, and long-term. Then when you are asked can you state or explain the two types of memory, you go very fast. Explicit, you explain. Implicit, you explain. So that's why we are saying the main processes are encoding. This one is the involves learning information by perceiving and relating it to existing knowledge. Then storage, maintaining or holding the information, the encoded information for a period or for a time. Then retrieval is accessing the information when it is needed. So those are the main processes. Main processes. Finally, I want us to look at what is called how memory works. How memory works. How does memory work? Sorry. How does memory work? Memory works through the three processes we have talked about. Encoding, it is encoded. 2, it is stored. And 3, it is the information is retrieved. So we are saying under the same that information is moved from sensory memory through rehearsal to short-term memory, removed from sensory memory. And in sensory memory, we have what we call the sensory pad or sensory register. Sensory pad or sensory register. Sensory register does not keep things for a long time. So that information, when rehearsed, will be moved from sensory memory to short-term memory. And then with rehearsal, or when it is rehearsed or processed deeply, rehearsed or processed deeply, it will move to long-term memory. It will move to long-term memory. So I hope you are clear there. So how it works, or the way memory works. One, the information reaches the sensory memory at the sensory pad. Then when it is rehearsed a bit, it moves to short-term memory. And at the short-term memory, through rehearsal, you repeat it for 1 or 2 minutes. Then it is moved to long-term memory. You remember the choir master who is teaching people, is teaching older people. Your mother does not know, no, I don't want to talk of your mother. Our mothers may not have, our grandmothers may not have known how to read and write, grandmothers. But they were very good choir members. And they remember those songs very accurately. The choir master kept on repeating these things to them. And that is what we are calling rehearsal. So when they go out, they remember very well. The church person who is teaching catechism may not be using written things, but may keep on rehearsing these things in the minds of these people. So when they go to church, they can say those things offhand without referring. So that's sometimes they say they have memorized them. No, they have just rehearsed it. And when it has been rehearsed, it stays there for a long time. So that is what we call how memory works. But there's something we are calling working memory. Working memory. You can write that one. Working memory. Working memory is a component of short-term memory. It is a component of short-term memory which involves actively manipulating information. It manipulates that information actively. Actively, like we were learning with somebody called Mutegi. And we had just learned about some things, but those things were looking very funny. So Mutegi kept on calling them. Whenever we are, when Mutegi is seated somewhere, you hear him repeating those words alone. So what is happening in Mutegi's brain is called working memory. Working memory is a component of short-term memory, and it involves actively manipulating information. Actively manipulating information. Yeah, actively manipulating information. So he was talking of, we'll talk of these people came to look for the Spice Island, and there was this Portuguese called Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama came with other sailors, or came with some, we call them who? We call them, they were sailors, but they were also explorers. They were exploring. And these people, yeah, they were navigating. They were finding out the way, the shortest route to India. So we were told one of them was called Francisco de Almeida. Those were very funny names. One was called Francisco de Almeida. Another one was called Alfonso de Albuquerque. Alfonso de Albuquerque. You remember those funny names? Huh? So somebody was saying, hey, Francisco de Almeida, Alfonso de Albuquerque. So Mutegi kept on talking about these names. Francisco de Almeida, Alfonso de Albuquerque. So he was trying to work the memory. That is what he called working memory. It was working in his short-term memory. And eventually, the information reaches the long-term memory. And you can see, I can still recall those funny names up to date. I can recall them indefinitely. But remember, we were taught them in primary school. Now, I just want to conclude by saying that forgetting can happen. Forgetting can take place if information is not properly encoded, stored, or retrieved. Forgetting can possibly occur if information is not properly encoded, related to the events, or stored, not properly stored, or retrieved. Retrieving, you get the needed information. So if you retrieve wrongly, if it was wrongly encoded, it will be wrongly stored. And obviously, it will be wrongly retrieved. And that one will lead to forgetting. And you know very well that forgetting is simply the rotting of information. When that information rots, then we say the information is forgotten. It is the rotting of information, meaning it was poorly or it was not properly encoded, stored, or retrieved. That is how information is forgotten. That's how information is forgotten. Just within a short time, because our time is already gone, I want us to know that memory is the faculty of encoding, storing, and retrieving information. I want you also to know that there are three main stages of memory: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Then I want you to know also that we have two main types of memory, which are the explicit memory or declarative memory, and the implicit or non-declarative memory. We know that there are the three main processes of memory are encoding, storage, and retrieval. Those processes must go like that. Then, last but not least, memory works by encoding, or memory works by moving information from sensory memory to short-term memory, and through rehearsal, it is moved to long-term memory. Moving information from short-term sensory memory to short-term memory, and through rehearsal, the word rehearsal, through rehearsal, it is moved to long-term memory. You cannot move any information to long-term memory without rehearsing it. That's why we tell you revise for exams. Then working memory, as I told you, is a component of short-term memory, which involves actively manipulating information. And I've said finally that forgetting will only occur when information is not properly encoded, stored, or retrieved. So that one gives us the end of our class today. But I want to give you assignment that will give you, go and look, go to the library, or you can go to your internet library and find out the diagram. There is a model. Draw, look for the model and draw the memory model. Depending on where you land, you call it model. Some people call it model. Model. Some people call it model. And some people call it model. So go and look for that model and draw it. It will show you where the sensory memory is, and then you'll see somewhere there called the sensory register. I'm now conceptualizing for you. Then there's an arrow that you will draw from the sensory memory, and that arrow will take you automatically to short-term memory. You'll write there the information takes this number of time. Then from the short-term memory, draw another arrow that brings you to long-term memory. Long-term memory and the time it takes there. So that one is what we call the model. That is a model. And at the same time, draw a simple model. Draw a simple model whereby you are talking, or you are just defining memory. Write encoding, draw an arrow going to another small rectangle there, and write that rectangle storage. Then draw another arrow to another next rectangle, and in that rectangle write retrieval of information. retrieval of information. By drawing those ones are becoming your episodic events. The first episode is encoding. You come to the next episode, which is storage, and then the last episode, which is retrieving. So that one will also help you in that. Without taking any more time, I want us to end our class now, and we may have another class. Kennedy, please today don't call me for a class. We are supposed to teach this class for lecturers. So please, today I will not teach you again until maybe tomorrow or another day. So Kennedy should pick that information and relay it to you. I know whenever the class is constituted, he always looks for me immediately. And that is very good, Kennedy. You are doing a very good work. But I'm just requesting you that today I've just taught you, and that one makes the work for today done. Thank you.